Because the social rules, the social contract in our world is you obey the rules of the government. Well, the government says you can't work if you're on welfare. So if I'm adhering to the social norms, well, what do I do? What's the social part of social worker? It's not having friends and being sociable. Social means you uphold the social order. So what do I do with the woman on welfare? Do I report her? Do I say to her, you can't tell me this, I don't want to know it? What? And I know full well that there's no way this woman can maintain any degree of comfortable life on a budget like that. What do I do?
Does the Code of Ethics have any legality attached to it that would affect you if you didn't adhere exactly to it?
Yes and no. I mean, there's certain things about you have to testify in court if you get in order for a lawyer to subpoena your records. It's rather legalistic in that sense. But this is a subjective moment. This woman who I know has been struggling. I'm going to. This is the least of them. Let me tell you. There's many, many more that are much, 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 much more complex. So this is just the appetizer, if you will. So when do you start having difficulties or ethical questions? Ethics, of course, refers in this context to what is right and what is correct. So that's what, when we're talking ethics, and we talk about normative ethics, and there's lots of language surrounding the words ethics, but ethics really deals with what is right and correct. Okay. Ethical conflicts begin from the moment, almost, that you sit down with a client. Where does this begin? It begins with the question of fees. And we are in a profession, we are in a business. If you think of professional work as a business, we're in the profession of making a living. Well, what do we do about clients who come to us who have no insurance and really very limited ability to pay? Well, I've got a mortgage, I've got oil bills, I've got a car to maintain, even though it's a Prius. We have to put food on the table. Do I take clients who will only be able to pay me $15 for a session? Do I make insurance as the cut point? Well, if you've got insurance, well, I'll see you. So the question of fees, do we turn someone away who is really in anguish because I'm working to live as well? Or not? I mean, is this, again, it's the question of what, it's a subjective call, but based upon my life's reality. I have electric bills. I have taxes that are going up. Do I say, sorry, can't see you? And then what about the client who does have insurance? And the way it works with counseling and insurance, we have to sign up with certain insurance companies to be able to do counseling for these insurance companies. Some of the insurance companies pay so little, it's almost not worth the time that we spend with some of our clients. Yeah? I keep pointing to Allison because she does psychotherapy as a psychologist. So, do we have the right to say no? The answer is we don't. We really shouldn't. But then again, I have car insurance. I have whatever. I'm not doing this just for the glory. I have a job. Then there's another issue that kind of creeps in periodically around the question of insurance, and that is we fill out forms that we send to the insurance company for reimbursement. One of the things on the form is, what's the diagnosis of this client? We have this Jagundo book that has 1 million pages that has standardized diagnostic criteria that we all work from. And this is called the DSM-4, almost the DSM-5. We write and we go through the DSM, find the appropriate diagnosis that we think is applicable, and we are supposed to put that on the insurance form. Depending upon the diagnosis, some companies will only pay a certain amount for a certain amount of visits. So if you put a rather benign, if you will, diagnosis, which may be safer for the client, you may not get paid after 6 sessions. If we put down a much more serious diagnosis, very often a client will say to me, and I discuss this with every client, don't put down, I had recently have a client who is an air traffic controller. I discussed the issue of a diagnosis. If I put down that this woman has major anxiety disorder and accompanied with maybe a drug addiction, she'll lose her job. If somebody saw that at the FAA, she'd be gone in 5 minutes. So I had to discuss with her, what are you comfortable with me putting down as a diagnosis? Now, that may be absolutely contrary to what I believe. However, she has a job to protect, and so forth. You're allowed to jump in.
I'm a bad ethicist or whatever because I don't have a problem with any of these.
Oh, okay. All right, go ahead.
It's a menace to the public.
It could be.
She absolutely.
Absolutely should. Remember, the good news is she's coming for counseling.
Well, if you cure her of all her problems.
Well, yeah, but if I put down adjustment disorder with mixed emotional features, which is a very benign diagnosis, they may only let her come for 6 sessions. If I put down major they may let her come for a whole year.
What is she earning a year?
She's an air traffic controller.
They earn a lot of money.
But the question is, what do I do? Do I do what I believe, or do I do what's expedient? And these are issues that come up, and we haven't even talked about why someone's coming from you. We're still at the fee-setting stage here. We're still at the door, almost. Okay.
The patient has the option to pay out of pocket if they really want to protect confidentiality.
Yes, they do.
That insurance information.
Yes, they do. They have that option. But the thing is, but they're also paying money to an insurance company for service.
So the way I look at it is the insurance, the diagnosis is just a rubber stamp thing. Who gets this diagnosis? The insurance company that determines whether the patient needs treatment or not. And I don't think it's up to the insurance company to decide whether the patient.
Well, but I'm paying. Most people have, well, I don't know, a lot of people have insurance. They could say to me, why am I going to pay you out of pocket if I'm paying for my insurance?
Right. So I would go with I talk to the patient too, and I say, if we make it sound a little more severe, like don't you have some really bad days, then you're more likely to get.
I'll tell you something. I do that as well, but with an air traffic controller. If I wrote down what was really going on with her, she might be, and yes, it could be a risk.
That's where it's none of their business. It's between the patient and you, not the insurance company. Their job is to pay the claim.
And we all know.
They shouldn't be in there bean counting and reviewing your work, in my opinion.
That's what you're right.
Problem with. I don't have a problem with it.
All right, let's go past the door. Let's have the client come in and let's see what's going on with this person. There is the question of what I call, and this, let's assume that the client has now seen you a few times and we've kind of got a working thing going on here. We have issues that are called in the business dual relationships. And a dual relationship is really defined as when we engage with a client at more than one level. In other words, in more than one relationship. You think it's easy, huh? You're shaking your head. You think this is easy? It's not. This is, I know what the social part of social work, this is the work part of social work, to try and sort this stuff out. So here's the question. Dual relationship. Either what if I have a business relationship with this client? What if I have someone's a member of the society, for example? That would be considered a dual relationship. Do I accept that? Does the client, let's say it is a member of the society, and we say to each other, look, let's be honest about what's going on here. I have a position in the society, you have a position in the society, we're going to run into each other on Sundays at social things. Are you comfortable with that? Well, once that's agreed, you're okay, but it's awkward, and here's when it became awkward. I was seeing a client for quite some time, and she had enrolled in the School of Social Work where I was teaching. And she came to me one day and she said, look, I have one more semester of school, and I'll be graduating with my own degree. That's wonderful. And all this time I had never seen her even at the school, because the school is very large, and I was only adjuncting. And she said to me, I have to take a course this summer. I see that you're teaching the course, and you're the only one teaching the course. If I don't take this course with you, I'm not going to graduate until months beyond. And I have to pay extra, and a whole long story. That's a classic dual relationship. What should I have done? Said, no, you can't. Should I have said, okay, let's be very clear about what this is all about? It also made it very awkward because I couldn't tell any of my stories, certainly about her, in the class. But perfect dual relationship. And what if someone in the society said, I'd really like to see you, I like your orientation, who you are, blah, 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 and would you be able to see me? Should I accept that? No. Why not?
It's like treating someone in your family.
You can't carry on a social relationship and a client-patient relationship.
People would say you can. I certainly had to do this with this student. And let me tell you, I'm looking at her papers saying, well, I knew her to be bright, so I wasn't, but I was like, when she writes a term paper, what do I do with that? What if it's an abominable piece of work? What do I do? It's awkward. Should I have said to her, no? But I'm not going to graduate. You're preventing me, and you've been so supportive of my going to the school. Well, talk about awkward. Okay. Another area where it gets very fuzzy is that, and it's akin to the dual relationship, are boundary issues. Boundary issues usually are defined as those situations where someone that you are seeing in counseling might have a social situation or a graduation or some momentous event in their life, and they ask for you to go. Should you go to somebody's wedding who's a client? To their graduation?
Right. I ever thought about this. Very few choices in life and options are clear-cut, where it's right or it's wrong. They're usually very complicated.
Well, you can go right back to the poem. Devil, angel, devil, angel.
Yeah, but look what's happening in our country today. You know. You have choices to make. There's bad, and there's a worse choice, and there's even a worse one. But you do have to make a choice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So
you can't just look for perfection and say, well, I did the right thing, that's the end.
Well, many people in my profession, and some of the things that you read in the professional literature say, absolutely not. You violate boundary issues, and you're looking for trouble. Others would say, but the kid's getting married, and I've known her since or him since, and one of the major events in their life was, how about this one? Let's say I go to AA. Let's say I'm going as a regular participant in the Alcoholics Anonymous program, and in walks a client of mine at one of the meetings. Will I stop going? Do I not look at that person? What?
I've been seeing a therapist for some time, and I knew her mother-in-law, and I knew things about her family, and she didn't know that I was. She said if she'd known, she would not have accepted me as a.
Yes. Okay.
This is the rule. She said she's been invited to all my parties, etc. She turns me down. She has set the boundaries, and it's fine.
Well, again, the boundary question is a hotly debated one. If I've been seeing a client for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, take this woman who became my student. When she first came to me, she decided she was going to go to social work school. I supported it. I wrote a letter. 100% I supported her. Should I have gone to her graduation? Yeah, they're all rough ones.
I had a patient once who had, all kinds of terrible problems, and she got on her feet, and she was getting married, and she invited me to the wedding. And she was so sweet, and she said, "You've been with me through the worst of times. I want you to be with me at the best of times."
Absolutely.
It was lovely, but fortunately it was several months away. And I explained to her, I said, "Look, I really appreciate you wanting me to be there, but let's think this through. How are you going to introduce me to people?
That's the problem.
Where am I going to sit? Do I bring my husband? How do I talk about how I know you?" And she got it, and that was all. I just needed to talk about it with her, and she understood, and she ended up not inviting me, which was perfect.
Well, this is a client with insight, and you helped with that. But put the shoe on the other foot, the client might be devastated. After all, you've been my therapist for 5 years. It's only through your wonderful help that I'm able to engage in relationships. What do you mean you're not coming? It would almost be considered an affront. But practice wisdom would have you do what you did.
But then, you know what? I could also be persuaded, because if it meant that much to her, and I'd say, "Well, I'll come to the wedding and not the party," or something like that. I'll sit with that.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways to kind of shave this, but it's tricky.
With your student, could she attend the course with you teaching it and somebody else grade her term paper?
If need be. But it would still be a very unusual placement of she to me.
Solve a couple of problems.
All right, let's move on. Again, we're getting to the more interesting ones. Yes, Al.
The people that write those rules,
Codes.
those codes, they have to say these things. They can't just put down, "Well, use your judgment." So they make these hard rules,
Right.
and you have to get around them.
Thank you. You're right. Absolutely right.
It's the same thing with the tax.
But one of the things that is explicitly said in the code is, this is a quote, and I don't even know what number, it's some number or another. Primary role of social work is to promote the well-being of the client. Now, is going to the wedding promoting the well-being of the client? Well, that's a question. I mean, somebody would say, no, it's creating confusion. It's creating a dual relationship or a boundary issue. Others would say, well, if you've been supporting this client, well, by all means, you should continue to support the client. Promote the well-being of the client. That's code number 127823 or whatever it is. Okay. Another major area in counseling is that of self-determination. Self-determination is defined as, and it's a strong value in social work, I'm sure it's in psychology too, that the self-determination is to promote somebody's ability to make decisions for themselves. And so, we have situations where, in our own opinion, self-determination, the client is determining to do something that is really counterproductive. Oh, what do I do? Now, this is a moment out of my own practice. I had a client who, a gay guy, in a floundering relationship, financially very impoverished, and was really earning a meager living. And he said to me, "I'm going to steal a car. There's a Mercedes, there's a really fancy Mercedes that I see often in my neighborhood. I know where it's parked, and I'm going to steal a car. And I know where I can fence the car, and I know how much money I can get for it, and it will make things fine." Do I say, "Excuse me," and head to the phone? What do I do?
Is there something in the social work code, like I know with lawyers, if you knowingly have a client that has committed
Suicidal, homicidal, and child abuse. Those are absolutes.
Stealing cars as if you...
That's... And I said to the guy, "Don't tell me. I don't want to know this." Because if I know it, I really think that I do have to do something about it. I mean, that's, again, where the social and social worker, the social piece, there's a social order to which I accept as being a social order. This is a crime. But then again, what if someone is saying, the area of HIV opened up a Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas, huge questions about how you should manage situations. So I have a client who says to me, he's HIV positive, and says, I'm having unprotected sex with several partners, and one in particular. Huh? I mean, this is like a loaded gun. What do I do? Now, I can tell you that if I were a physician, well, let's just make it a little easier. The guy has only one, he's got a full-time partner, not multiple partner, a full-time partner. If I were a physician, I would be honor-bound to call in the partner and tell, but not as a social worker. I am not obligated to tell. But how terrible is that? That's a very serious thing, to be HIV positive and having unprotected sex.
That's the gray area. If someone says, I'm going to go shoot somebody, you have a duty to warn.
Yes, but not here.
But HIV...
Well, that's the thing, but I have a conscience about that. What about this poor partner who may be infected because his partner is saying, I'm not going to tell you? I mean, that's something very wrong with that.
Like your 13-year-old who's
With the abortion. Don't tell my parents.
The baby will have HIV. I mean, this is horrendous.
Yes, it is.
But it's life.
Well, but if I uphold self-determination, which is actually discussed at some lengths in the code, and if I want to adhere to the code around self-determination, I'm supposed to say, okay, or raise questions about behavior, which is really the way around it, if you will.
With the 13-year-old, I mean, she's a minor. She's a child, as far as I'm concerned. So isn't there like a special obligation that you have to...
Yeah, there's a certain kind of a cutoff thing. But then again, if I ever want to see her as a client, I can't go ratting her out. But then again, her well-being may be that at 13 you don't have sex with someone who's HIV and you don't get pregnant. Fuzzy.
Well, for the 13-year-old, it may be if she needs someone to be a parent, and she would continue to see you.
We hope.
Even if she felt betrayed.
Well, again, this is where our role may have more importance than not. We could be that parent and say, look, I won't talk to your parents, but we really have to have a serious talk about safe sex, and we really have to talk about what you're doing. And lead her to Planned Parenthood. We can take on a somewhat different role. But initially, it's a real confusing kind of a moment. Truth-telling, another real fuzzy place for us. And the question of how much do you tell? So this is the only case that is not directly related to my own practice. Let's take the case, you're a social worker in a hospital, and a patient of yours has something wrong with their foot. And you're in the room, let's call the patient's name is Kevin. Kevin, you're in Kevin's room, kind of meeting with him. He's got something really serious going on with his foot, and the doctor comes in and says, we have two ways to treat this. One of them is the standard, we've done this procedure dozens of times, it's the standard of treatment for your foot. The recovery will be 6 weeks, the risks are such and such. However, we have a brand new procedure that we have tried out on a number of patients, and it seems to work very, very well. And it cuts down the recovery, it's much less invasive, it's going to really, it's got tremendous promise, and it's been tested numerous times with wonderful results. And so we have A is the old way, and B is the experimental way. I'm going to leave you to think it through about what you want to do. Now you're the social worker in the room at that moment. Doctor leaves. Now, not only are you the social worker in that room at that moment, but you know that the doctor did not tell the patient everything about the experimental treatment. He did not say that they've had actually a number of near fatalities and that the healing time was much longer than what the doctor told the patient. And you know this. So what do? You go over to Kevin and you say, hey, listen, Kevin, the doctor's full of baloney. Well, that would be one option, but I think by maybe a half hour after that, the supervisor would come in and you would be packing your desk and thrown out of the hospital because the doctor would have a coronary if he thought that the social worker were undermining the situation. But you know that the doctor did not tell the whole story. How much do you intervene? Well, this one is not as complicated because you can use your role in a helpful way. You could say to this patient, I understand you've gotten the options presented to you. Maybe would you like some literature on what these studies have shown? Would you like to talk to some other people? You can kind of influence the patient to do more searching before making their assessment. By the same token, they make the decision anyhow, because the doctor is usually much more persuasive. But you know. And here's another one. This is actual. Came out of my practice. I had been counseling a woman for quite some time around her husband's illness and ultimate deterioration and ultimately his death. And they were just scraping by. They didn't have a lot of money, kind of an older couple, etc. And he died. About a month later, the woman comes to see me to just kind of, everything was kind of settling down finally. Maybe it was more than a month, maybe 6 weeks, whatever. And she says, we're really struggling. LIPA's threatening to turn off the electricity, and we just between the funeral bills and the hospital and and then there's the situation with the ring. And what situation? Well, here's the story. Her husband had a pinky ring, a very expensive, the only piece of jewelry the guy wore, and it was really the only thing of value that the guy had, and it was gone. She searched every place and could not find the ring. She called the insurance company, reported it missing. It had been insured, and they sent her a check for $5,000, for which she was able to pay off some of the creditors. About a week after she gets the check, she had 2 grown children living in the house with her. Children were living in the house, and she was putting away some laundry in her son's drawer and found the ring. This is a dilemma that she's telling me about. She's troubled by this. And even though she's not asking me what I think she should do, she's asking me what I think she should do. She's got no money. She's got $5,000 and no ring. And now she has a ring. Now, when I present this dilemma to my students in my class, almost every one of them says, screw the insurance company. The hell with the insurance company. And, they screw us out of money left and right. The hell with them. I don't know if that's the reaction in this room.
This is the ethical society.
This is the ethical society. Now, we all may have sentiments about screw the insurance company.
I love to screw.
Well, so the question is, when she's telling me this story, what do I say to her? There is nothing in my code of ethics that's 20-some-odd pages long that tells me how to handle somebody who's stolen a ring from an insurance company. So what do I do?
Well, and it's more than one ethical dilemma, because it's also, it's the insurance fraud issue, and then it's, do you turn in your own son?
Well, that wasn't even part of the discussion. She was mostly concerned about the insurance company. So again, the question is, I'm a social worker. Social means I adhere to social contract. So do I say, excuse me, and go and what's the name of that insurance company, and call the insurance company? What do I do? I can tell you what I did. What should I have done? Should I have reported her? Blah, blah, blah.
I think she should go get the ring appraised, make sure it is worth $5,000, and then return the money to the insurance company and sell the ring.
What? It had been appraised at that amount. It was obviously had been insured.
Appraised at that amount, she could probably sell it for that amount.
Oh, so you're saying work to give it back to the insurance company?
Give the money back to the insurance company because that's not right.
Let me tell you though, and I can tell you, I'm being her for the moment. I have a car payment. If I don't pay my car, if I don't pay my mortgage, I'm not going to have a house to live in. It's at that level. So while that might be a solution if she were fairly comfortable, well, maybe. What should we do? Screw the insurance company? The hell with it? Or, now if I say, the hell with the insurance company, that means I'm colluding with her in crime. Well, I can't do that. I mean, I don't need a code of ethics to know that that's not right. So what do I do? I'll tell you what I did. I said to her, and she knew what I was going to say. She knew it because she was bringing it up and she was troubled. I said to her, how do you want to handle this? And we went back and forth with some possibilities. And what she ended up saying to me is, you know what? I'm going to call the insurance company and tell them. Okay, let's see. Maybe they have a heart. Maybe they don't. So she calls the insurance company, and lo and behold, the insurance company said, you know what? We understand. And she explained the whole situation with the death, the terminal illness, and they said, we'll arrange for you to make a payment every month of $20 for the next millennium, and we'll call it a wash.
Very nice.
Very nice. Somewhat unexpected, I might add. So that's the question of truth-telling. How much truth is there? Do I tell the guy in the bed that his doctor's full of baloney and that there's much more risk involved in that foot operation than not? Do I tell this woman, you've got to tell the truth no matter what, no matter what? It's very gray. However, the next question, and that is of confidentiality, is even more risky. And in 10 minutes, as I'm keeping my eye on the clock, I'm going to tell you perhaps the most challenging case that I ever had that revolves around confidentiality. And here's the story. This is true as I am standing in front of you. I got a phone call from a gentleman who said, I need to talk to you. I got your name from someplace, and I have something I have to talk to you that's very serious. Okay. Made an appointment, did the whole thing with the fees, got all of that squared away. Okay. And he tells me the following story. He said, and he was about 67-ish, something like that. He says, my wife had a brain tumor. And it began mildly and then progressed rather rapidly to the point that she needed full-time care. And we didn't hire nurses. I had been retired, and I was going to take care of her. And I took care of her and took care of her, and her condition worsened to the point that she was pretty much bedbound, toilet-bound. I had to do everything for months on end. Kids who lived in another state, a horror story. One evening, and it had been a dreadful few days. She was up all night. He was up all night. He was changing diapers. It was horrible. One night, she somehow everything was on the one floor in the house, and she uses her walker and manages to get into the kitchen of their house. And he's doing something in the kitchen. And she's standing at the basement door. He, in a fit of, I've had it, I can't stand it anymore, pushes her. And she tumbles down the steps. Now, she was days away from death as it was, but he pushed her down the steps. Tumbles down, dies almost immediately. He picks her up, carries her into the living room, and puts her on the couch. Puts a blanket over her, and calls 911. When there's a death in a house, a doctor has to come and certify the death, that it wasn't murder. Doctor comes, knows the history of this patient. What a shame. She's out of her misery, signs off on the death certificate. That was about 6 weeks ago. So he comes because he feels guilty and wants to tell someone about what he did. Excuse me? I have to call 911 and get the police over here? You're a murderer. Or what? What?
You said the code covered homicide.
The code covers homicide.
Joan, mine maybe you should be a psychologist. In mine, it's only future events. Past events.
How do I make an assessment about that? Maybe this guy is on a trail of murder for the next 20 years for all I may. Maybe he's the next Jesse James. I don't know.
But to duty to warn, you have to have a person to warn. You can't, if someone says, I'm going to go shoot somebody.
Allison, under any circumstances, this would be considered murder.
Yeah, but you as the therapist don't have to report unless it's something he's planning to do. If he says to you, at least in psychology, if he's planning to murder his wife and he tells you that, you say, I have to call the authorities now because you've told me of an intent to commit murder.
Okay.
But if he committed murder...
He committed it.
You are bound by confidentiality not to report it.
Am I?
I think so.
Am I?
If there were
Go to church.
an autopsy,
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
if there were an autopsy, if even in retrospect, I don't know if they ever do it after,
Not on death like this.
but if it had been discovered that because of her bruises, that she didn't die of her illness, but she died of a fall, which hadn't been reported, could you at some point have been responsible if he did confide in you and you didn't report it?
Yes. I think I would.
Is that not a factor in your decision?
Well, so what you're saying is, to protect myself, I should have reported him.
Did it occur to you at all?
Never.
Never?
Never occurred to me. I mean, I knew I had the option of reporting him or not reporting him. But as Allison is implying, this is one of those moments of complete subjectivity. In other words, do I really feel that this man, who came willingly, nobody said you have to get yourself to counseling, he came to unburden. Yes, he could have gone to confession. Yeah, that probably would have been easier. But he comes to a social worker saying, I feel badly about what I've done. I am enormously relieved that my wife is gone, that this ended this horrible nightmare, but I feel guilty. Now, she probably would have died within the next few days, but he accelerated that. And he knew that she was going to die within the next little span of time. But the question is not, what about him? It's, what do I do? And do I say to myself, is this man a potential killer? Is this man someone who will marry again and if these circumstances presented themselves would do it again?
Yes.
And he might. So what should I have done?
When he pushed it, do you think it was premeditated or was it impulsive?
It was impulsive. It was totally impulsive.
Well,
He didn't know that she was going to come into the kitchen. The door just happened to be open. He had gotten something out of the and he just went like this in a fit of...
Then why should he do it? If it's not premeditated, then why should he do it again? If it's impulsive.
Would you feel comfortable not doing anything about it?
Yeah, I wouldn't call anybody about it. I'd forget about it.
Okay.
Are you comfortable, on a general basis, with putting the onus on the patient and saying to the patient, I can no longer have a professional relationship with you unless you do such and such? If you felt strongly that he should report it to the police, could you put yourself in that position?
Of saying, I can't deal with you, leave my practice.
Unless, no, if you do report it, then I will continue to treat you.
And he'll be in prison.
What did he want from you, Joan? What did he exactly want?
He really wanted absolution.
He just wanted you to tell him it's okay.
I don't know if he went quite that far. He just wanted someone to have it, not him. He would have been a lot better off going to a religious person. But I don't know what code of ethics they have. Are they bound in some way? But he came to me. And that's what I had to decide at the moment. Yes, Jean?
Could you have reported it and say, I'm reporting it, but I don't know whether it's true or not?
No.
This is what was told to me. Whether it's correct or not, I have no idea. I do not vouch for the accuracy of my report. I'm just telling it to you because it was told to me. I have no idea whether this is true or not true.
Well, unfortunately, I think that in the eyes of the law, he would be a murderer.
Absolutely.
He would be a murderer.
Did he
Yeah.
It was unpremeditated.
It was unpremeditated, but it's still murder.
show remorse? How did he feel about it?
No, I wouldn't say he showed remorse. He was almost numb.
Huh?
He was almost numb. I don't know that remorse... he felt something about it because he had to get it off his chest. But he'd been through such a nightmare with the loss of his wife and the many, many months of her decline. I mean, no, I wouldn't say remorse is too strong.
Oh, we're going into mercy killings now. We're talking about...
Well, that's a whole other area.
Isn't this part of the whole thing, the same thing?
If anybody that's watched the news has seen similar scenarios where a husband will, shoot the wife, or the wife will shoot the whatever it happens to be, because they've got this terminal illness, they can't take it anymore, yada yada yada, and at 90 years old, here's this guy going off to jail. So in the eyes of the law,
It's murder.
it's murder.
In the eyes of the law.
So you know that going in, that if you report it, chances are he's going to go to jail.
And well, something was going to happen to him.
I'm still stuck on this idea, though, that since it was in the past and not the future, that makes all the difference.
Yeah, but again, okay, I stole money from a business partner in the past. If those circumstances came up again, I might still steal. I mean, it's not going to be exact, but once I did it and got away with it.
That's your job then to work with the patient on how to live the life that you want to live, and is stealing a part of it. And I agree with Lois that you could say, listen, I have a patient that makes fun of me. He's got a girlfriend that lives with him, and he says, I want to cheat. Can't you help me cheat? And I go, no, I can't help you cheat. I've been working for years for you to develop a conscience. And it's a little joke. And he goes, what good are you if you can't help me cheat without my conscience bothering me? That's a self-determination. He wants to cheat on his girlfriend without anxiety. And I said, I'm not going to help you do that. So, it's a joke. But with this guy, if he's not got a girlfriend waiting in the wings to marry and push down the steps, you have no one to warn, and it's a past thing. So it keeps you up at night because he let you have his trouble. Now you're holding the trouble. But I think you have a duty to confidentiality first and foremost, since it's a past event.
How do people feel about that?
If he's feeling that guilty that he feels he had to share it with you, it would seem to me that a logical question would be to him also, well, what do you want to do about this? Exactly. Because then maybe he'll come to that conclusion.
I said that. He said, look, there's nothing to do. It's over with. It's done. I just needed to tell somebody about it.
But he'll probably be troubled by it the rest of his life.
But is he going to be troubled as a prisoner or out of jail?
No, but still, that's a horrible thing to walk around with a guilty conscience.
Yes.
Who wants to do that?
No, I never said, I can understand this was the right thing to do. I never gave it was an okay. Right. I let he was struggling, and the struggle was a real struggle. Yeah.
Couldn't he admit to it and plead temporary insanity?
Yeah, but then he's already involved in a trial, and yes, Jean.
It seems to me that in this particular case, you're concerned about your own protection, and you reported it the way you told it, just the way it was handed to you. He told you. That's hearsay evidence. That's not it's up to the police or the judge or whoever it is to decide whether or not you were at fault or anything. So far, all you've done is Mr. So-and-so told you blah, blah, blah. He pushed the woman down. Fine. You told it to the police. That's as far as you're going to... You can't...
But again, you're saying I have an obligation to call the police.
You can't report anymore. You can't report anymore. You can't say that because he pushed her, this is what happened. That's for the judge, for the...
Yeah, but you're saying it should go into a legal situation. My job would be to force this into a legal situation.
Because of the circumstances you described. You described, number one, this man told you he pushed the woman. You told that to the police. You said, according to what he told me, Mr. So-and-so told me he pushed the woman down. It's up to them to decide whether or not...
Yes, but you're already... But your position is my obligation was to tell somebody in the legal system about this predicament. Okay.
Your obligation to yourself.
So what did I do? How many people think I should have gotten in touch with some authorities? Gotten in touch with, called a police person to come to my house and arrest this person. And one person, but you said...
I say that it's up to you to tell the police whether you should tell them to arrest you or not.
But to tell the police something, to engage the police.
Anything more than what you told them. You told them.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility not only to the patient but to yourself.
Okay.
Your future could very well depend on the outcome of this case. You don't know which direction it's going to go in.
So again, I should get in touch with somebody on the legal end.
Go to somebody else and tell them
the same story.
Told you.
Could do that.
You know what? If somebody falls down the stairs, I think the doctor probably realized, because an old person, especially who's sick, if you fall down the stairs, you're going to have bruises and bumps all over your body. So the doctor probably realized something crazy.
Not at all. The doctor took her pulse and said, your nightmare is over.
Right. But he don't you think he would have said...
This woman was going to die within 2 or 3 days, as it was.
But maybe he himself said to himself, it doesn't look like a natural ending to her life. And
none of that was on the table, though. If he did, he did. Nothing was ever said. So here's what I did. I had to make a decision about whether I felt this man was a potential killer. And I did nothing. And this was, I don't know, about 15 years ago. As far as I know, he didn't kill again. As far as I know.
Maybe he'll get married again.
I don't know anything. I saw him maybe 2 or 3 times after that initial visit.
And you sleep well at night, your conscience is...
Well, sometimes.
Did you do anything to allay to soften his guilt?
No. Basically, he needed to just vent. And I asked him a lot of questions, and he just talked it out. And he left feeling not uplifted, but as if he loved his wife. That was part of the history taking. He really cared for her, cared about her, and certainly cared for her beautifully. She was not in a hospital. She wasn't in hospice. There wasn't, that she was cared for and probably kept her alive longer than she would have if under other circumstances. So that piece was just deposited with me. Fascinating. Okay, on that note of ambiguity, and here's the duality of the whole struggle. If we go back to the original mandate of the primary mission of the social work profession is to enhance human well-being and help meet the basic needs of all people. It's very murky at times because the basic needs of all people might be in major conflict with the individual's needs. And so, Couple of concluding thoughts. If you don't have integrity, you have nothing. You can't buy it. You can have all the money in the world. And if you are not a moral and ethical person, you really have nothing. That's it. That's all she wrote. I didn't even touch